Okay, so like I said, we're going to go ahead and get started. So what today is all about is just looking at the digital marketplace right now, and what are some tips that we've seen and advice that we would give mortgage brokers to really jumpstart or accelerate their digital growth. So just to kind of give you a brief agenda of what that means. So first of all, introduction. So you're probably wondering a bit about who I am and who BluRoot is and what BluMortgage is. Maybe until a couple weeks ago you hadn't heard of us, until our email hit your inbox. So we'll tell you a bit more about who we are and what we do, and then we'll jump into the content and the meat of the presentation. And what we want to focus on is kind of three areas, right? So first of all, how do you get more people to your website and actually writing in? So that's kind of the crux of a digital growth marketplace, is getting traffic to your website and then converting that traffic. So we cover both, the getting people to your website and then converting them. But then the journey doesn't stop there, right? So now that you've converted a digitally focused consumer, it's going to have very specific needs as you go through the conversion process. So taking them from that write-in to an actual closed mortgage. Finally, we're going to talk about very briefly, but I think it is important to mention, in this digital age, how do you get the most of each write-in, right? It doesn't even have to be a closed mortgage. Instead, it could just be someone who's interested, but how do you make sure you get the most value out of each piece of interest you get through your various digital channels? So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So like I said, what I want to spend a little bit of time doing at least is telling you about who I am and kind of what BluMortgage is. So myself, Tom Hall, as you can see there, I've worked a lot with, in a past life as a consultant with some of the big financial institutions within Canada. And kind of coming out of that, that's where I really developed my enthusiasm. It shows there, I'm a fintech enthusiast, and it's really true. Enthusiasm for how we can really leverage technology to help accelerate and advance the financial services space. So that was a big part of my past, and now it is a big part of my present as the product manager at BluRoot. And so what we do at BluRoot, kind of bringing it all together, is we've created this product called BluMortgage. So BluMortgage, as you could probably guess by this, is a fintech software product. But basically the crux of the BluMortgage product is it's built on a platform called Zoho. And we've basically taken this platform Zoho and we've customized it to be very specific and exactly what meets the needs of the Canadian mortgage broker in today's day and age. So we'll tell you a bit more about that in terms of this diagram over here. I'm sure some of you guys have noticed it, and I think it kind of explains it well. So what BluMortgage is, like I said, it's a software product, but you're probably wondering, okay, what does it do? This diagram kind of gives the very, very high level, right? So when you get prospects or people who are interested digitally or not digitally, we're going to focus on the digitally today. But BluMortgage helps take that in and then helps you perform the necessary actions to the point where they're a customer, and then you can start using the FileLogic system. I know I asked in my registration survey, what software do you use? And almost everybody says FileLogics. In Canada, it's a huge system. And so we really help with the process of taking it from the prospect and to the point where you can start using the FileLogics to actually close the mortgage. Two things about the BluMortgage system that I want to highlight. One, it's all about empowering the broker, right? There's a lot of tech out there. I think that doesn't necessarily have the broker in mind. Ours is very focused on the broker. And the reason for that is because we believe that the broker and the mortgage broker is an integral part of the value chain still and will continue to be. And we want to make sure that mortgage brokers can be as efficient as possible and serve the customer as best we can. And that's the way the customer is going to get the most possible value. So that's really our aim with this. And the other thing I'll say about BluMortgage, it's really a sales growth focused software application. FileLogics on one hand, it's a big database. It's very great at what it does, and it doesn't have a ton of competitors. But it's a database, right? Whereas BluMortgage is going to be a sales tool. It's going to help you really grow both your new business as well as your existing business. So enough about us. It's probably not why you guys joined this webinar. So we'll kind of get into the more fun stuff of different things and different tactics we have to really drive your digital growth. So I'm sure a lot of people here have heard this before, but it's very important. And what we're going to start at is the organic marketing. So the idea of organic is, in your web presence, you're going to be organic are things that aren't paid. So things like writing articles or doing things like this webinar or posting on your social media, those are all organic avenues because you're not paying for them. So I wanted to touch on that first because those things are the free things, right? The things that aren't going to cost you an arm and a leg to do. So on the organic side, the biggest advice I say is create content. And that's kind of what I was referring to in terms of, you've probably heard that before. So do create those articles, do create, these webinars. But beyond that, content can be as simple as, a LinkedIn post or a Facebook post, whatever it is. That's all organic and that's all content. So that's the first step, wrapping your head around making content. And once you have there, how do you go about actually creating that content? You say, yes, I want to, but how do I do it? So two things I'll say. One is at the center of it all, it should be about providing value. So consumers are very smart these days. They're very savvy. They shop around a lot. So if you're not doing something that's going to help them, they're going to just scroll past that article or that post or whatever it is. So focus on providing value for your customer. And when you do that, they're going to start paying attention and you're going to be able to have conversations with these customers. And then the second piece about providing value is being authentic about it, right? Like I said, people are very smart and savvy these days. If they see some gimmicky post, people see right through that and they don't like that. So be authentic in the value that you're creating. And then the second thing I'll say is about this table down here is you can actually use a lot of great online tools out there to help you create that content. So you said, yes, I want to create content. 2, okay, I know I want to provide value, and this is kind of the topic at least that I want to talk about that I think will be valuable. You can start using, once you nail those 2 things, you can start using these tools that I've shown down here as ways to take it to the final stage, bring it over the finish line. So just kind of going through the table, I won't go through every single one, but just at a high level, content ideas. So you say, hey, I want to provide value, as an example, maybe you want to write an article of how to evaluate a mortgage broker and which one was right for you. That could be a content idea that you have, but you don't know exactly what's creating buzz in the industry around that topic. You can type it into a tool like BuzzSumo, and they're going to tell you, look over many, I think about 5 to 10 social platforms and tell you which articles related to that topic are really trending right now. So that'll kind of get you more refined in terms of your topic. Once you are a bit more refined, you can jump to something like CoSchedule to do a title analyzer for you. So with this refined topic, you can then say, okay, I think I'm going to write about this, but what's the best way I can really have a punchy title? You can type into a tool like CoSchedule. They're going to tell you how good, they kind of give you a rating of how good that is, and then they're going to give you feedback on how you can improve. Really great tool. Another thing is document creators. And when you do these types of articles, no one really wants to look at a big block of text for a huge period of time. So I really encourage people to do documents. And when I mean documents, it's things like infographics or flowcharts even. Those are all things that really can appeal to certain people. And it's coming back to providing value, right? And on a lot of consumers, that's kind of the most valuable content you can provide. But I'm not a graphic designer. I don't know if there's any graphic designers on the webinar. But if you're not like me, you can use something like Canva or DocHippo, and they'll provide those infographics for you in a nice drag and drop format. And then finally, this is less so about creating content, but once it's actually created, you can post it on places like Medium. So Medium is actually like a blogging website, and it reaches a much wider audience than you would maybe just posting it on your social media or on your website. So if you think you have just a really, really great article and you want it to reach as many people as possible, Medium is a great way to do that. So great, you've written this article, it's creating a lot of buzz. A lot of people are saying, I'm sure on this call, okay, I kind of get that, I already knew those things. how do I take it to the next level? Well, here are some tips on how you can do that. So first of all, meet the customers where they are. So if you're a mortgage broker who's more focused on commercial, LinkedIn is probably more the platform for you because that's where people are making their business decisions. On the other side, if it's you do more personal mortgages, Facebook is probably a platform that you want to do. But you have this great content, but make sure that the avenues that you're actually blasting it to meet the customers where they are. And the thing I'll say about each of those platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, is they really prefer native content. And you might be wondering what native content is. Basically, it's stuff that they host. So as an example for LinkedIn, let's use that as an example, or even Facebook. Maybe Facebook's better. You can post a YouTube video, so you can type in a link and post it. Or you can upload your own video and then Facebook hosts it and actually plays it for you. If you do native content like that, the ones that Facebook is actually owning and hosting, it's going to be a lot better and it's going to reach a lot more people. And that has to do with Facebook's algorithm because they want you to do that. They want you to post their native content, and so they encourage you and incentivize to do you by reaching more people. The other thing that's really important is actively backlinking your articles. So backlinking all has to do with SEO. And SEO is all about the Google search, pardon me. So, organic marketing is great. You write a great article, but where it really comes through is being able to, come up and start coming up on the first page of the Google searches. Once you start doing those, getting on the first page for Google searches, it's really going to drive a lot of traffic to your website and really help you, grow digitally, right? So what does Google do to determine what goes on the front page? So the first thing, and maybe one of the biggest things, is backlinks. And so what a backlink is basically another website that references your website. So if I use myself as an example, if one of you guys on this call would be gracious enough and include on your website a link to the BluRoot website, well, that's a backlink for BluRoot, and that's going to make me go higher up in the ranks. So what you can do with this, you say, okay, that's great, but how is this actionable? And what I say is be active about it. So if you have a partner, so say you wrote that article I was talking about earlier, how do I evaluate a mortgage broker? And maybe you think, hey, this might be useful for other mortgage brokers or maybe different partners that I have. Be active about it. Say, hey, I've written this article. Reach out to them, email, phone call, whatever. Hey, I've written this article. I think it could be very valuable on your site. Would you mind including a link to this article on your site? So being active about that, and you can have, I've seen success rates of anywhere from 5% to 50%, depending on how selective you are. But by being active like that, you're going to really increase your backlinks and boost your SEO. So I encourage you to go back when you rewatch this webinar and check out a couple of these links that I've included here. They add a bit more context to this backlinking methodology. One thing I will say about it is use something called domain authority. So if you're not sure, there's 10 people I want to reach out to, but who do I pick first? You can use a domain authority. And what domain authority basically tells you is that who's going to boost you the most. The higher the domain authority, the better their backlink is going to be. Finally, audit your site. So another thing that Google really focuses on is page speed and mobile friendliness. So basically, it's very important. If you have a very fast website, Google's going to rank it higher. If you have a website that's really good for mobile devices, Google is also going to rank that higher. But so once again, that's great advice, but how is that actionable? Well, I'll show you how. So what you can do, and I'll just quickly close, if you open up a Google Chrome browser and you open it up, and I'm just going to go to maybe everyone's favorite, FileLogix. Let's just check out theirs. So any website, and you probably want to do this to your own website, but what you can do is you can actually, once you're in Google Chrome, and it has to be Google Chrome, you can right click, you can hit inspect here, and then what you're going to do is you're going to go all the way across the top, forget about all this craziness down here, not important, go across the top, keep going until you hit audits, and you click that. And then what the audit does is it tells you what you want to look at. So like I said, mobile is important, so I'm going to check mobile. And then it checks a bunch of other things like performance, best practices, accessibility, and your SEO. So I'm going to run the audit. So this takes about a minute or two. So I'm actually not going to wait that out. Instead, what I'll do is I'll show you kind of what the result looks like usually. So what you get out of that is you get a nice report like this to see performance, success, best practice SEO, like I said. And then what's really nice is below is they give you very practical tips on how you can boost each of those, and very specific tips to your problems and the rankings that you have. So those are my kind of tips in terms of the organic, but sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes, the consumer has not the attention span to read an entire article or do this or do that to boost your organic. So sometimes you have to get into the paid realm, and I'm sure some people in the call are considering it, but they really don't know where to start, right? It can be tricky because you look at this and you see how much people can be spending on these platforms, and it's a little intimidating, especially when you don't know the ROI. So here on this page, I focus on kind of my tips for the 3 biggest platforms I think you should focus on: Google, LinkedIn, Facebook. So let's go one by one for these and kind of, like I said, give you my best tips on how you can make the most of each of these. So Google AdWords, I think the first thing and my biggest tip is going after the long tail. So what is a long tail, you might ask? Well, it's described in this little infographic to the right here. So here is words. It's a line. This line represents words. And this is a graphic book put together by SEMrush, which is another great tool that can help your SEO. But in any case, what it shows is all the words. And so what you can see is there's a lot of words over here, like they use tomato plant as an example, but they have a very high search volume and a very low conversion rate. So in the mortgage space, a word like this would be just mortgage, right? A ton of people just search mortgage, and if they click your link, they may not even be interested in a mortgage right now. Maybe they're just doing research on mortgages, right? Maybe it's a grade 5 student who has a project, I don't know. So it has a very low conversion rate. And as you start going down this curve, you go over from tomato plant to why are my tomato plants turning yellow? So a lot less people Google that. But if someone's tomato plants are turning yellow and they ask that, and you have an article that explains why they're turning yellow, it's a very high conversion rate, right? They're very likely to engage with you and interact with you. And so that's why I recommend people starting out, but even as you're getting more mature in your digital spending, to focus on these long tail words. And why I say that is because, first of all, you're going to be spending less because it's a lower search volume. When people do click, you're going to be able to convert them more, right? If you start bidding on things like, hey, how can a mortgage broker help me with my commercial mortgage and, Toronto, Ontario, something that's pretty specific. Well, like I said, low search volume, but if you can match that question exactly, they're very likely to engage with you. So it's a great strategy to have to keep costs low, and your conversions high. LinkedIn is the next one, and you can see my little tagline here that says it's best for user filters. And what I mean by that is, for each of you, I want you to think about, okay, where is my most accurate information online? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn? Is it any of your other social profiles out there? Maybe, I don't know, Instagram. For me personally, and I think a lot of people I talk to, it's LinkedIn. Because LinkedIn is important to be very accurate because it affects your professional life, right? Anyone who has a job or is looking for a job wants to have very up-to-date LinkedIn information because they have incentive to do so in terms of their career. Facebook, for example, I haven't updated my Facebook job in, 10 years at least, and it's not accurate, right? So when you want to do very targeted ads to very specific demographics, use LinkedIn. So if you really want to target, people who are in their 30s, right? Maybe young 30s in a very certain area, or maybe just going out and trying to get their first mortgage. You can do that with LinkedIn, and they're going to give you the best data more than any other platform. So you can filter on, hey, I want to look at people at this age, at this stage in their career, and in this city. You can get very, very specific with LinkedIn, and that's when I would recommend using LinkedIn and really how to use it best. For Facebook, I do believe it's important. I saved it for last, but not because it's not important. Facebook, I believe, is the best thing about Facebook. You can do those things like LinkedIn, but the data might not be great. But where I see a lot of value in Facebook is just your brand awareness. So it's a great place, using those display ads. So display ads being picture-based ads, where it's just you can, have a graphic that would appear on someone's newsfeed that just reminds them, hey, I'm your mortgage broker, or hey, you visited my website. I'm just here to remind you that I exist, and please reach out if you have any questions. So it's really great for that. And there's one thing I mentioned kind of in that little snippet there is, hey, if someone went to my website, right? So what Facebook actually allows you to do is track those people, right? So you can actually see, hey, who's come to my website? And then you can make sure that ads only show to those types of people who have come to your website already. Once again, keeps your costs down and your conversions up. It's a lot like the long tail method. Finally, I don't want to spend too much time on this page because I don't think there is a ton of revolutionary content here, but I want to make sure I touch on it. Your website conversions. So now you've done all this work throughout your website, what do you do? So 3 quick things I would say, 4 actually. I know there's 3 boxes here, but 4 things I'll say is, 1, make sure that if you're advertising somewhere, whatever you're advertising matches the landing page you're going to. So what that might mean is if you have 4 or 5 or 6 different ads, you have 4 or 5 or 6 different landing pages. And I really recommend you doing that, and you can do that with something like Elementor or Unbounce or Landingy. Not sure if I'm saying that right. But those are all things that will help you create very quickly landing pages that can match your ads. The other thing I'll say is your call to action, great to have at the top here. So people aren't scrolling around, hey, where do I write in? So on the right here, I have a little example, and it says, everything that you would want to ask them, it's in this first area here. A couple other things I say here, but I don't want to spend too much time on because I just want to be conscious of everyone's time. But what I will say is a really great way to engage people these days is a nice chat in the bottom right. So I'm sure you've gone to websites where it just says, hey, I'm here. If you have any questions, just let me know. That's a great way to engage them. Maybe they've scrolled around and they've missed the form up top. That chat box is just going to be always on their screen and a way for them to engage with you if you want. And so can you get these chat bots or chat windows? Well, BluMortgage is one option, and that's the first of many shameless plugs that I'll provide here. But it's an option, and by using the BluMortgage application, you can include that on your website. Okay, so you spent all this time, all this effort, all this money to create great ads, pay for great ads, and actually have great landing pages to convert them. So now someone's written in, what do you do? Now this I think is an incredibly powerful graphic here because it shows you how consumers are and how short attention span they have. So what you're seeing here is along the left, a bunch of different time frames of how long it takes to call someone, and then the bars is how likely you are to convert them. So as you can see, if you call them in 5 minutes versus 10 minutes, your chances of converting already go down by about 5 times. So just let that sink in a bit. So if you are thinking about doing these types of things, you got to make sure that when they do write in and you do achieve your goal of that conversion of a website write-in, you're completing the process, you're calling them within 5 minutes. 95% of the time, the first person to call the customer, if they're shopping around, 95% of the time, it's going to be the person who actually gets the business. So make sure you're the first one, get them within 5 minutes. It's incredibly powerful. And once again, it's not easy to do all the time. It goes to your inbox, you don't see it all the time. So what you need for that is really a system like BluMortgage, right? We help you with those types of things. So when someone writes in, instead of just going to your inbox, then you're in a meeting, you can automatically get that to your phone. The phone number is going to be right there. It's just one click and you're on the phone with them within seconds of them writing it. Really powerful stuff. So now you've engaged with them, and now the mortgage process begins. Once again, having a digital focus in this webinar, I'm going to focus on engaging the more modern consumer, the one who probably wrote into your website, who's not the referral, who's not the person who's friends of a friend of another client. It's the person who wrote in, who's been shopping around. They're modern and they're focused on doing things efficiently and on their own terms. So my first point is streamlining the data collection, right? So instead of going back and forth, hey, fill this form, fax it in, that sort of thing, the person who wrote into your website isn't going to be open to that, right? The modern consumer, that 25 to 35 demographic, those people really, maybe getting their first home, that sort of thing. That demographic wants things quick, wants things on their own terms. So leverage a form, right? There's a lot of great technologies out there. An example is Finmo, another is Flowify, and I know a couple of people on the webinar mentioned that they use it, and that's great, right? It allows people and this modern consumer to fill out this information on their own form, on their own terms, and it's actually the most secure way you can collect that information. What I'll say about both of those technologies I said, Finmo and Flowify, BluMortgage directly integrates with them. So once you have that sales piece of calling them, you can use the document collection and it's all going to come back into the BluMortgage system. But after you've collected that data, you guys obviously know there's a lot more steps involved. And then this is where the BluMortgage's power really comes in, is these next steps. So as you're going through the process and now you've collected the documents and everything is looking good and now it's going through the underwriting process, one thing we always say to all our clients is constantly communicate, right? For a lot of people, this is the biggest debt that they're ever going to take in their entire life. And so, if they send it to their mortgage broker and then it's just a black hole for 3 or 4 weeks or whatever it is, that can be very stressful. So it can provide a ton of value for your clients, but as well as the other parties involved, by like a realtor or lawyer, just constantly communicating with them. So sending emails, texts, the modern consumer isn't going to be checking their emails as much as they check their texts. Just having that communication of every step of the way that you provide. And one thing that BluMortgage does is it helps automate those types of communications. So, those repetitive tasks can be greatly simplified. You don't have to think about it, but you're providing great service at the same time. The last thing I'll say is don't neglect any part of the process, right? If you stumble in a consumer's life, these mistakes are inexcusable, and it could be something that leads to a lost client, for example, or a lost deal. So make sure that you have a system, whatever that system is, to make sure that you're hitting every single step and you're not missing anything. And BluMortgage provides that. So we've worked with industry professionals, and we actually give you, depending on the complexity of the mortgage, 20 to 30 steps after the data collection, step-by-step tasks that you have to do in terms of people you have to reach out to, follow-ups you have to do, and we provide all that. And so, like I said, nothing falls through the cracks, and you maintain the trust of your clients. So BluMortgage provides exactly those steps, and that goes all the way through to the close and even 30 days post-close, making sure you're doing the right actions to keep that trust of your client. Finally, what I'll say is make sure you increase the value of each website write-in. So 2 points there. Beyond what I said about making sure you're doing all the steps to convert them properly. 2 things I'll say on top of that is a non-converted lead is still valuable, right? Even if it's a lost lead, you know that, hey, they're probably going to have their, a renewal in about 5 years. So why not have a system that records that? And then in 4.5 years, reaches out to them and says, hey, I know in 6 months you're renewing. Here are our rates. Here's our great testimonials of other clients. Give us a call if you're interested. Very, very powerful. Very hard to do unless you have a system like BluMortgage that can provide those reminders for you. Even if it's not a lost lead, maybe it's someone who says, hey, I saw your ad. You guys look great, but my mortgage doesn't renew for 2 years. A system like BluMortgage is a great way to keep track of those types of interactions and making sure when that 2 years is up, you're on top of it. You're the first one to communicate, and you're the first one to get that deal. Then finally, I talked about the post-close. We don't forget about the client there in our BluMortgage system. Instead, you want to make sure that you're constantly communicating with them, because a huge part of this business is still the renewal and is still the referral. So what BluMortgage can provide is help with that communication. And in fact, we give you 32 touch points over the 5-year period until the renewal to make sure you're building that relationship, getting that renewal, getting that referral. So I kind of did 2 parts of this webinar, and just keep conscious of time. Just bear with me for another couple minutes just as I wrap this up. There's really two parts, I think, to this webinar and 2 points I want to drive home. So the first part is, boosting that digital presence. And, I threw a lot at you, and, doing everything for everyone on this call, doing everything might not make sense. But I bet you about 80% of the things that I said, you could do with 20% of the effort. So for those people out there listening, figure out what your specific 80-20 is, right? What are the 80% of things you can do to really drive that, drive 20% of the effort to get 80% of that value, and do it, right? There's no way you're going to really learn about what works and what doesn't work until you start trying and you start getting that feedback from the market on understanding what's going to work for your specific business. And the second thing I'll say is get a sales system, right? So this might sound like a plug, but in all honesty, talking about providing value for customers, I know I mentioned it earlier, but really what the most valuable piece of advice to say is get a system. It doesn't have to be BluMortgage. It doesn't even have to necessarily be technology, right? I recommend both of those, being technology and BluMortgage, but find something that works for you and have a system to do all those things I talked about. Following up, making sure you're not missing any renewals, making sure you're not missing any people who are lost leads. Have a system, because the brokerages that are going to have a system and have that data to make really great educated decisions for their brokerage are going to be the ones that are going to be able to grow in this new age, in this new digitally focused age. So have a system that enables those things, and all other things will kind of fall into place around that. And kind of my punchline is be better than what FileLogix can offer, right? It's a database. You can have some data in there, but there's so much you can do with all that data and the things that you're doing. So have a system that allows you to do that. Be better than what FileLogix can offer. So that's pretty much it. I know I went about 5 minutes over time, so I want to thank everyone for their patience and staying with me. What I'll do now is I'll quickly look at the questions, and from those questions, maybe answer them out loud. But if there's no questions, we can wrap up. All right, looking at the questions, I don't see any. So in that case, like I said, I'll wrap up now. We'll wrap up now. And what I'll do is either late this week or early next week for everyone who's attended, I'll forward you a recording of this. You can rewatch it and as well share with your colleagues. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.